Imagine a police car built from the ground up for law enforcement. Not a modified civilian sedan, but a purpose-built machine designed to protect officers, intimidate criminals, and revolutionize pricing. In 2008, that dream nearly became a reality. This is the story of Carbon Motors, a company that raised $200 million, secured a former Visteon plant in Indiana, and had 24,000 orders on the books, yet never produced a single vehicle for sale. So how does a company with government backing, cutting-edge technology, and overwhelming demand from its target market fail so spectacularly? The answer involves Wall Street crashes, political gambles, and a fundamental misunderstanding of what it takes to build a car company from scratch. The vision. In police departments across America, mechanics spend countless hours modifying standard civilian vehicles for police use. They install prisoner cages, computer equipment, reinforced bumpers, and specialized lighting. The process is inefficient, expensive, and creates compromises in safety and performance. William Santana Lee saw this problem early. A former Ford executive with over a decade of experience, Lee understood the automotive industry from the inside. In 2003, he had a radical idea. What if someone built a purpose-built police car from the ground up? Lee wasn't just thinking about a better police car, he was imagining what he called a homeland security platform on wheels. A vehicle with integrated technology, superior safety features, and purpose-built components that would last longer and perform better than modified civilian cars. Lee's vision found support from another automotive industry veteran, Trevor Rutherham, who worked at Ford, Jaguar, and Land Rover. Together, they founded Carbon Motors in 2003 with an ambitious mission. The timing seemed perfect. Post 9/11 America was investing heavily in security and law enforcement. Police departments were struggling with rising fuel costs and maintenance issues with their aging Crown Victoria fleets, and a new wave of entrepreneurial spirit was challenging established industries. The Carbon E7 wasn't just a new police car, it was a revolution on wheels. The specs read like a law enforcement wish list. A BMW 3.0-liter diesel engine promising 40% better fuel efficiency than the Crown Victoria, a top speed of 155 miles per hour, 0 to 60 in 6.5 seconds, but the performance was just the beginning. The E7 featured a purpose-built aluminum space frame with integrated push bumpers and a driver compartment designed to withstand a 75 mile per hour rear impact. The seats were shaped to accommodate officers wearing duty belts with cutouts for their equipment. Perhaps the most impressive was the technology integration. The E7 included automatic license plate recognition, radiation and biological threat detectors, an integrated prisoner compartment with video monitoring, and a sophisticated dashboard computer system. Police officers who consulted on the E7's design have stated that it was like someone finally asked cops what they actually needed instead of telling them what they could have. And law enforcement responded enthusiastically. By 2010, Carbon Motors had collected over 24,000 expressions of interest, essentially pre-orders contingent on production, from more than 500 law enforcement agencies across all 50 states. The company claimed this represented nearly $3.6 billion in potential sales. With a production target of around $50,000 per vehicle, the E7 would cost about the same as a fully modified Crown Victoria, but offer superior performance, durability, and safety. William Lee loved to emphasize one particular point about the E7's design. It would be, in his words, obsolescence-proof. The traditional police car procurement cycle involved buying civilian vehicles, spending thousands to modify them for police use, and then removing all that equipment when the cars reached the end of life, only to reinstall it on new vehicles. Carbon Motors promised to break this wasteful cycle. There was just one problem. Building a car company from scratch is extraordinarily difficult and expensive. And despite impressive prototype and mounting interest, Carbon Motors was about to discover just how challenging it could be. The funding chase. Starting a new car company in America had become almost impossible by the early 2000s. The last successful attempt was Chrysler in 1925. Since then, countless automotive startups had failed, from Tucker to DeLorean to Brooklyn. Lee and his team needed substantial capital. Estimates suggested at least $350 million to reach full production. Their strategy involved a mix of private investment and government support. Initially, Carbon Motors raised seed funding from angel investors and smaller venture capital firms. Reports suggest they secured about $15 million in early private investment, enough to develop the prototype and begin marketing to police departments. But the timing for raising larger amounts proved catastrophic. Just as Carbon Motors was gaining momentum, the 2008 financial crisis hit. Venture capital dried up, especially for capital-intensive manufacturing ventures. In 2009, with private funding increasingly difficult to secure, Carbon Motors pivoted to a new strategy: the Department of Energy's Advanced Technology Vehicles Manufacturing Program. This loan program, established under President Bush and expanded under President Obama, was designed to support the development of fuel-efficient vehicles. Tesla, Ford, and Nissan had successfully secured billions through this program. Carbon Motors applied for a $310 million loan, arguing that the E7's diesel engine and aluminum construction aligned perfectly with the program's goals of promoting fuel efficiency. While waiting for the federal loan decision, Carbon Motors made a major announcement. In July 2009, they selected Connersville, Indiana as the site for their manufacturing plant. Connersville was a struggling community that had lost thousands of jobs when automotive supplier Visteon closed its factory there in 2007. Carbon Motors' promise to bring 1,300 manufacturing jobs made them heroes overnight. Former Connersville Mayor Leonard Urban later recalled in public statements how the community's excitement felt like winning the lottery. Everyone believed this would save their town. Indiana's then Governor Mitch Daniels became an enthusiastic supporter, offering $10 million in state incentives to secure the deal. The state later agreed to lease the Visteon plant to Carbon Motors for just $1 per year. The company moved into the 1.8 million square foot facility and began preparing for production. Engineers were hired, equipment was purchased, and plans were drawn up to convert the massive space into a modern automotive assembly plant. But everything hinged on that $310 million federal loan. Without it, the math simply didn't work. The political football. In March 2012, after 3 years of waiting and reportedly spending millions on the application process, Carbon Motors received devastating news. The Department of Energy rejected their loan application. The timing was politically charged. Just weeks earlier, solar panel manufacturer Solyndra had filed for bankruptcy after receiving a $535 million loan guarantee from the same DOE program. The Obama administration was facing intense criticism for what opponents characterized as wasteful green energy investments. William Lee didn't accept the rejection quietly. In a fiery press release, he accused the administration of playing politics with Carbon Motors' application, stating, "We are outraged by the actions of the DOE, and it is clear that this was a political decision." Industry observers were divided in their analysis. Some suggested that the DOE had grown excessively cautious following the Solyndra scandal. Others pointed out that Carbon Motors simply might not have had a viable business plan. The truth likely involves elements of both explanations. What's certain is that Carbon Motors became caught in a political crossfire. Republican lawmakers criticized the administration for not supporting a company promising to create jobs in a struggling region. Democrats defended the decision as responsible oversight of taxpayer funds. Energy Secretary Stephen Chu defended the decision in public statements, saying, "We have to be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. The Energy Department simply cannot risk another Solyndra." There have been reports, though unconfirmed, that Carbon Motors had been asked to move their manufacturing site to Michigan or another politically advantageous location. The company reportedly refused, having already committed to Indiana. While these claims can't be verified, what's clear is that the political environment surrounding government investment in private companies had shifted dramatically between 2009 and 2012. Without the federal loan, Carbon Motors needed to find an alternative funding quickly. They attempted to secure international investment, with Lee making trips to potential investors in the Middle East and Asia. But according to sources familiar with the company's operations, Carbon Motors came close to securing an investment from a sovereign wealth fund, but negotiations fell apart in late stages. As 2012 progressed, the situation grew increasingly desperate. Carbon Motors began laying off staff at the Connersville facility. Equipment purchased for production sat unused, and law enforcement agencies that had placed pre-orders began to wonder if they'd backed the wrong horse. The downfall. By early 2013, the end was in sight. Carbon Motors quietly vacated its Connersville facility, leaving behind utility bills reportedly totaling over $100,000. In March 2013, the company filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy. Unlike Chapter 11, which allows for reorganization, Chapter 7 meant complete liquidation. The dream was officially over. The bankruptcy filings revealed the extent of the company's financial troubles. Carbon Motors had accumulated debts of $21.7 million against assets of just $18,976. Among the creditors were the city of Connersville, the state of Indiana, and numerous vendors and suppliers who had taken a chance on a startup. For Connersville, the collapse was devastating. The city had invested heavily in preparing for Carbon Motors, both financially and emotionally. Mayor Leonard Urban later described it in public statements as a punch to the gut that the community never fully recovered from. The E7 prototype, the physical embodiment of all those hopes and dreams, disappeared from public view. Its current whereabouts remains something of a mystery, though rumors suggest it was acquired by a private collector. So, what went wrong? With 24,000 pre-orders, government support, and a genuinely innovative product, how did Carbon Motors fail so completely? The lessons. The story of Carbon Motors offers several important lessons about entrepreneurship, manufacturing, and the challenges of disrupting established industries. First, timing is everything. Carbon Motors launched just before the 2008 financial crisis, which devastated their chances of securing traditional investment. Had they started a few years earlier or later, the outcome may have been different. Second, building a car company requires extraordinary capital. Even with a focused market like law enforcement, the costs of design, testing, certification, and manufacturing are enormous. For context, Tesla burned through nearly $4 billion before becoming profitable, despite having a billionaire founder and operating in a much larger consumer market. Carbon Motors was attempting something similar with far less capital. Third, depending on government funding is risky, especially when political winds can shift dramatically during a lengthy application process. Fourth, automotive industry analysts have suggested that Carbon Motors may have been too ambitious from the start. They might have been more successful by initially modifying existing vehicles before attempting to build a completely new platform. As automotive journalist Dan Neal wrote at the time, the history of automotive startups is largely a history of failure. The graveyard is full of brilliant ideas that couldn't navigate the extraordinary financial and regulatory hurdles of the industry. One particularly interesting what if involves Tesla. In 2009, as both companies were pursuing DOE loans, there were rumors of potential collaboration between Carbon Motors and Tesla. Nothing materialized, but one couldn't help wondering how different things might have been if these two disruptive companies had joined forces. While this potential collaboration can't be fully verified, it represents the kind of strategic partnership that might have changed Carbon Motors' trajectory. The legacy. Despite its failure, Carbon Motors left a lasting impact on police vehicle design. Many of the innovations they proposed have since been incorporated into police vehicles from major manufacturers. Ford's Police Interceptor utility, based on the Explorer, now dominates the market that Carbon Motors hoped to revolutionize. It incorporates purpose-built features specifically for law enforcement, including enhanced structural reinforcement and specialized cooling systems. The idea of integrated technology has become standard, with manufacturers now offering comprehensive police packages rather than requiring extensive aftermarket modifications. William Lee, the driving force behind Carbon Motors, has continued his entrepreneurial journey. He later founded Nightscope, a company developing autonomous security robots, another innovative approach to law enforcement technology. The E7's design itself has achieved something of a cult status among automotive enthusiasts and police technology buffs. Renderings and photos continue to circulate online, often accompanied by comments lamenting what might have been. Perhaps the most significant legacy is cautionary, a reminder of how difficult it is to disrupt established industries, especially those involving complex manufacturing and government purchasing. Conclusion. The story of Carbon Motors isn't just about a failed car company, it's about American innovation, ambition, and the high-wire act of entrepreneurship. In many ways, Carbon Motors was caught between two worlds, the traditional manufacturing economy that built the American middle class, and the new venture capital-fueled startup culture that promises disruption but often struggles with physical products. The company's vision, a purpose-built vehicle designed with direct input from the people who would use it, remains compelling. And in an alternate timeline, police officers across America might be driving E7s today. While Carbon Motors ultimately crashed and burned, the spark of innovation it represented continues to influence how we think about specialized vehicles and the potential for rethinking established products from the ground up. Sometimes it's the failures that teach us the most valuable lessons about innovation, timing, and the courage required to challenge the status quo.